There is an ancient word that echoes through the lush mountains of Jamaica, vibrating through the heavy bass lines of reggae music and whispered in the sacred gatherings of the Rastafari. It is a word that describes an empire of illusions, a global system built on the blood of the innocent and the theft of the earth's riches. That word is Babylon. For decades, the prophets of the Caribbean, men like Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, and Burning Spear, sang of a day of reckoning. They prophesied that Babylon was a vampiric system, a beast that fed on the resources of the global south to maintain its glittering, hollow cities in the global north. They warned that this system was unsustainable, that the foundation was built on sand, and that one day the beast would starve and the walls of Babylon would inevitably fall. For a long time, the Western world danced to the rhythm of these songs without ever understanding the lyrics. The economic hitmen in Paris, London, and Washington dismissed the concept of Babylon as mere religious poetry, a comforting myth for the disenfranchised. They continued to draft their colonial mining codes. They continued to print fiat currency backed by stolen African gold. They continued to assassinate any leader who dared to threaten their supply chains. They believed the system was invincible. But history is a wheel, and the cosmic scales of justice demand balance. Today, the prophecies sung in Kingston in the 1970s are manifesting into hard, terrifying geopolitical reality in the 21st century. And the catalyst for this epic collapse, the man who is currently pulling down the pillars of the neo-colonial temple, is Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. To understand why the West is in a state of absolute, unmitigated panic over Traoré and the Alliance of Sahel States, you must look past the military headlines and look at the spiritual and economic architecture of Babylon. The Western Empire is not sustained by its own natural resources. Europe is a continent historically devoid of the massive mineral wealth required to power the modern age. The entire matrix of Western prosperity, the electronics, the nuclear power plants, the gold reserves backing their central banks, is almost entirely dependent on extracting raw materials from Africa at criminally low prices. Babylon does not produce. Babylon extracts. It is a parasite disguised as a benefactor. In Jamaica, they understood this matrix implicitly, but they knew that the transatlantic slave trade never truly ended. It merely evolved into corporate imperialism. The physical chains on the wrists were replaced by the invisible chains of the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the CFA Franc. The prophecy of Babylon's fall dictates that the system will not be destroyed by a nuclear war between superpowers. It will be destroyed when the victims of the system simply wake up, close their vaults, and refuse to feed the beast any longer. This is exactly what Ibrahim Traoré is doing. He is not just a military leader. He is an exorcist, driving out the demons of economic exploitation. If you feel the truth of this historical awakening, and you want to be part of the community that documents the fall of the neo-colonial system, hit the subscribe button and join us here at the Red Beret. But we are dedicated to translating the epic shifts of our time into the truth you will never hear on the mainstream news. When Captain Traoré took power, he did not politely request a renegotiation of terms with the French mining conglomerates. He did not go to Paris to bow before the architects of the system. He looked at the vast gold mines of Burkina Faso, mines that have enriched foreign corporations while leaving his people in destitute poverty, and he invoked the ultimate act of sovereignty. He began the process of severing the supply lines by demanding local processing, by building a national gold refinery, and by revoking the licenses of foreign entities that refused to respect the sovereignty of the Sahel. Traoré struck the Achilles heel of the Western economy. Gold is the ultimate currency of the earth, as it is the lifeblood of Babylon. For centuries, the raw gold of the Sahel has been flown out of Africa in the dead of night, refined in Europe, and placed in Western vaults to project an illusion of European wealth. By stopping this flow, Traoré is starving the beast. The sudden realization in Paris and Washington is not just that they are losing a political ally. It is the terrifying realization that they are losing their collateral. Without the free flow of African gold and uranium, the European economic model begins to suffocate. This is the mechanism of the curse. The system collapses the moment the host decides to stop bleeding. But the gold is only the physical manifestation of the war. The true psychological weapon of Babylon, the ultimate tool of mental and economic slavery, is the currency. In Francophone Africa, this is the CFA Franc. It is a currency printed in France, controlled by France, and designed to ensure that the economies of West Africa remain permanently tethered to the interests of Paris. Marcus Garvey taught us a century ago that a people who do not control their own money can never control their own destiny. The Rastafari of Jamaica sang about the funny money of Babylon, the paper illusions used to trap the righteous in perpetual debt. Today, Traoré and the leaders of the Alliance of Sahel States are preparing to strike the final, lethal blow to the beast. They are openly discussing the abandonment of the CFA Franc and the creation of a sovereign Sahelian currency, backed by the very gold they are now refusing to export. This is not just monetary policy. This is an epic historical act of defiance. Whilst it is the economic equivalent of David loading the stone into his sling to strike Goliath. When a nation prints its own money and backs it with its own resources, the chains of Babylon shatter instantly. The panic we see in the Western media, the sudden influx of sanctions, the desperate attempts to fund proxy wars in the Sahel, all of this is the thrashing of a dying system that knows its time is up. The resonance between the streets of Kingston and the deserts of Ouagadougou is undeniable. The diaspora in Jamaica watches the geopolitical maneuvers of Ibrahim Traoré and recognizes the fulfillment of their ancient songs. They see a leader who embodies the spirit of the Maroons, those fierce, independent warriors of Jamaica who retreated into the mountains, utilized their spiritual strength, and fought the British Empire to a standstill. What the Maroons knew that you cannot negotiate with an empire built on your subjugation. You can only cut it off and build your own reality. Traoré is building a Maroon nation on a macro scale. The Alliance of Sahel States is a geopolitical sanctuary, a fortress where the rules of Babylon no longer apply. The arrogance of the West was their belief that the trauma of colonization had permanently broken the African spirit. They believed that the resource curse was a permanent condition. They failed to understand the spiritual physics of the universe. When you compress a spring for 400 years, the kinetic energy it stores becomes unimaginably powerful. The suffering of the transatlantic trade, the exploitation of the colonial era, yet the assassinations of Pan-African leaders like Patrice Lumumba and Thomas Sankara, none of this energy was lost. It was accumulating. The Jamaican prophets felt this energy building and translated it into music. Traoré has harnessed this energy and translated it into statecraft. Notice how the empire attempts to frame him. The Western press uses words like junta, regime, and authoritarian to describe the governments of the Sahel. They try to paint Traoré as a villain because he refuses to wear the suit of the manager and play by the rules of the oppressor. But the linguistic tricks of Babylon have lost their magic. The youth of Africa and the diaspora can see through the illusions. When Traoré stands before a crowd, dressed in the combat fatigues of a man fighting for the survival of his people, speaking the plain, an unvarnished truth about imperialism, he bypasses the Western media entirely. He speaks directly to the soul of the people. This is the psychological warfare that the West cannot win. You cannot defeat a leader who has eradicated the fear of death and the desire for Western validation from his heart. Traoré has made it clear that he is not interested in being loved by the international community. He is interested in liberating his soil. He is fulfilling the mandate of the ancestors. The ancestors who were packed into the hulls of slave ships and brought to the Caribbean did not pray for a better manager of the plantation. They prayed for the plantation to burn. The economic hitmen of today are the plantation managers of yesterday, and the Sahel is the fire that will consume their ledger books. But we are living through a biblical moment in modern history. The global order that was established after the Second World War, the order that dictated that the South must sweat so the North can sleep, is fracturing. The cracks in the pillars of Babylon are visible to anyone who dares to open their eyes. The withdrawal of French troops, the ejection of Western ambassadors, the nationalization of the gold mines, the impending death of the colonial currency. These are not isolated incidents. They are the coordinated strikes of an epic prophecy coming true. If you believe that we are witnessing the turning point of a 400-year cycle, please leave a comment below. Let your voice be heard in this global awakening, and let the algorithm know that the people are ready for the truth. Ibrahim Traoré is not just surviving the shadow war, how he is winning it. Every day that he breathes, every day that a new refinery is built, every day that the Sahel moves closer to total integration, the beast starves a little more. The reggae legends of Jamaica sang that when the music hits you, you feel no pain. Today, the music is geopolitical, the rhythm is sovereignty, the melody is freedom, and while the people of the global South feel no pain as this new era dawns, the architects of the old world are in agony. The prophecy was never just a song. It was a countdown. And the clock has finally struck 0. The ancient curse of Jamaica has crossed the Atlantic and landed in the red dust of Burkina Faso. The gold is staying. The phantom wealth of Europe is evaporating. The unifier has drawn the line in the sand. Look closely at the world map, and you will see the flames. But Babylon is falling, and Captain Ibrahim Traoré is the man holding the torch.